Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battleship New Horizon, watching the stars drift past through the main screen. The patrol near the edge of the Sol system was supposed to be routine. Nothing ever happened out here. The closest alien ship was 3 light-years away, and most of them avoided human space anyway. The humans were still new to the galaxy. 50 years ago, they had finally figured out how to travel faster than light. Before that, Earth was alone in the dark. Now they were part of the Galactic Council, but most alien species still treated them like children who had just learned to walk. Jake did not mind. He liked the quiet patrols. His crew was good, and the New Horizon was one of Earth's best ships. They had been out here for 2 weeks, checking shipping lanes and making sure no pirates were hiding in the asteroid fields. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station, "I'm getting something strange on the emergency channels." Jake walked over to her station. Amy was one of his best officers, calm under pressure and smart as hell. If she said something was strange, it probably was. "What kind of strange?" he asked. "It's a broadcast from the Galactic Council. Emergency priority, broadcasting on all frequencies." Amy frowned at her screen. "Sir, this is the kind of signal they only use for..." She paused. "For the end of the galaxy." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared made everyone on the bridge go quiet. It showed the council chamber on Nexus Prime, but it looked nothing like the calm, orderly place Jake remembered from the news feeds. Alien delegates were shouting in dozens of languages. Some were crying. Others looked like they wanted to run. At the center of it all stood Elder Counselor Veshitar, the ancient leader of the Thymalan Empire. His usually perfect robes were torn and his 6 eyes showed pure terror. "People of the galaxy," Veshtar began, his voice shaking. "We face extinction. The Zephyrian Collective has begun their advance from beyond the galactic rim. 3 civilizations have already fallen. The Kepler worlds are gone. The Arcturus colonies have been consumed. The entire Vegan system has been converted into their machines." Jake had heard of the Zephyrians in intelligence briefings. They were supposed to be a myth, a story to scare young officers. Machine intelligences that consumed entire worlds and turned everything into more machines. No one had ever seen them and lived to tell about it. "The Zephyrians do not negotiate," Veshitar continued. "They do not take prisoners. They convert all organic life into biological components for their technology. They turn our ships into their ships, our worlds into their factories. They are coming for all of us." The Elder took a deep breath. "We are calling upon every species in the galaxy. We need military aid. We need ships, soldiers, weapons, anything that can fight. Please, if you have any ability to help, respond immediately. Time is running out." The signal ended. The bridge of the New Horizon was completely silent. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "should I monitor for responses?" "Do it," Jake said. He was already thinking. Earth had 12 battleships, maybe 30 smaller vessels. It was not much compared to the big alien fleets, but it was something. For the next hour, they listened to the communication channels. Jake expected to hear the powerful voices of the great galactic powers. The Quellan Crystal Fleet had hundreds of ships. The Ethereal Collective could move through space like ghosts. The hegemony of Valtis had weapons that could crack planets, but there was nothing. "Complete silence, Captain," Amy said, her voice filled with disbelief. "No one is responding. Not a single species has answered the call." Jake stared at the screen. "Are you sure?" "I've been monitoring all the major frequencies. Some species are talking to each other, but they're all saying the same thing. The Zephyrians are too powerful. Fighting them would be suicide. They're discussing retreat plans, evacuation procedures, surrender terms." Chief Engineer Ben Rodriguez, who had been listening from his station, spoke up. "Captain, maybe they know something we don't. If every advanced species in the galaxy thinks this is hopeless, then they're cowards," Jake said. The words came out harder than he meant them to. "Sorry, Ben, but someone asked for help and no one is answering." Jake opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. It took 20 minutes for Admiral Lisa Kane to come on screen. She looked tired, like she had been dealing with this crisis all day. "Jake, good to see you," Admiral Kane said. "I assume you got the broadcast." "Yes, ma'am." "What are our orders?" Kane was quiet for a moment. "The President is meeting with the Colonial Authority right now, but I think I know what they're going to decide." She looked directly at Jake. "We're going to answer that call." "Ma'am, with respect, we only have a few ships. The aliens have thousands. If they think it's hopeless, Jake, when did humans ever care about hopeless? Kane smiled, but it was a sad smile. Besides, someone has to try. And if no one else will, then it's up to us. 3 hours later, Jake received his official orders. Take the New Horizon and 11 other human ships to the Andorian sector. Find what was left of the Galactic Defense Forces. Try to stop the end of everything. As Jake prepared his ship for the jump to hyperspace, he found Ben Rodriguez in the engine room, running final checks on the faster-than-light drive. "How are we looking, Ben?" Jake asked. "Good as new, Captain. The engines are ready for whatever we're flying into." Ben paused. "Sir, do you really think we can make a difference?" Jake looked around the engine room. It was clean and efficient, built by human hands with human technology. It was not as advanced as alien ships, but it worked. And more importantly, the people who built it never gave up. "I don't know, Ben, but I know we have to try." "Why us, though? We're the newest species in the galaxy. We barely understand half the technology out there." Jake thought about that. Maybe that's exactly why it has to be us. Everyone else has been safe for so long they forgot how to fight for their lives. We never had that luxury. As the New Horizon jumped into hyperspace, heading toward a war that might already be lost, Jake stood on the bridge and watched the stars change from points of light to long streaks. Somewhere out there, machines were eating entire worlds. Somewhere out there, people were dying while their leaders planned retreats. But 12 human ships were flying toward the darkness anyway, because someone had asked for help, and humans never learned how to say no to that kind of call. The jump out of hyperspace near Kepler Station made Jake Morrison's stomach turn. The massive diplomatic hub hung in space like a broken city. Ships of every size and shape crowded around it. But these were not the orderly formations Jake expected from galactic powers. These were refugee ships, cargo vessels packed with survivors, and damaged warships limping away from battle. Commander Amy Foster studied her scanner readings. "Captain, I'm counting over 300 vessels around the station. Most of them are civilian transports." The military ships gone, she paused. "Sir, they all look like they've been running from something." Jake opened communications with the station. The response came immediately, but not from human voices. A tall, crystalline being appeared on screen. Its body looked like it was made of blue glass, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Zexhai of the Quellan Defense Fleet. You should not be here. This sector is no longer safe." "Admiral, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Horizon. We received the distress call from the Galactic Council. We're here to help." The crystal being stared at Jake for a long moment. Behind Zexhai, other aliens moved around what looked like a command center. Jake could see some of the gas-form ethereals floating near computer stations, and several insect-like Chitauri working at tactical displays. "Help." Zexhai's voice rose in pitch.
"Captain Morrison, do you understand what we are facing?"
"The Zephyrians have technology beyond anything we have seen. They adapt to our weapons in minutes. They learn our tactics faster than we can change them. That's why we're here," Jake said. 12 ships from Earth ready to fight." Admiral Zexhai made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like breaking glass. 12 primitive vessels against a force that destroyed the combined fleets of 3 star systems. "Captain, I mean no disrespect to your species, but perhaps you should consider evacuation instead." Amy looked at Jake and shook her head. She had been right. The aliens did not take humans seriously. "Admiral, we didn't come here to evacuate. We came to fight. Can you give us tactical information about enemy positions?" Before Zexhai could answer, every alarm on Kepler Station began screaming. The crystalline admiral turned to his displays, and Jake could see the fear in his alien features. "They're here," Zexhai whispered. "Zephyrian fleet, coming out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Jake watched the main tactical display as dozens of red dots appeared on the screen. The Zephyrian ships looked wrong somehow. They were perfect geometric shapes, black as space itself, and they seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. "All ships, this is Admiral Zexhai," came the broadcast. "Begin immediate retreat to Rally Point 7. Repeat, all vessels retreat immediately." Jake watched in amazement as the alien fleets began pulling back. These were some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with weapons and technology humans could barely understand, but they were running without firing a single shot. "Amy, signal the other human ships," Jake ordered. "We're moving to intercept." "Captain," Ben Rodriguez called from the engine room. "Are you sure about this?" Those alien ships make our fleet look like toys. Ben, someone has to try to slow them down. If we don't, they'll roll right over the refugees. Amy had been listening to alien communications. Sir Admiral Zexhai is trying to contact us. He sounds upset. Jake opened the channel. The crystal alien's face filled the screen, and his usually calm features showed pure panic. Captain Morrison, what are you doing? My sensors show your fleet moving toward the Zephyrians. This is suicide. Admiral, we're buying you time to evacuate the civilians. You don't understand. These machines have been studying galactic warfare for centuries. They know every tactic, every strategy. They fought the Thymelan Empire's best generals and won. What can 12 human ships possibly do? Jake thought about that. What could they do? The aliens were right about human technology being primitive. Human ships were slower, had weaker shields, and carried simpler weapons. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him about the old wars on Earth. Admiral, has anyone tried ramming them? The silence on the channel was so long that Jake thought the connection had been cut. Ramming? Zexhai finally said. Captain, that would destroy your ship. Maybe. But it would also damage theirs. What about boarding actions? Close combat? Boarding actions are... Zexhai paused. Such tactics have not been used in galactic warfare for thousands of years. They are considered barbaric. Sometimes barbaric works. 20 minutes later, the human fleet met the Zephyrian advance ships. Jake had spread his 12 vessels in a loose formation. Nothing like the careful battle lines the aliens used. When the first Zephyrian ship opened fire with weapons that could cut through alien shields like paper, Jake ordered something no galactic admiral had tried in centuries. All ships, full speed ahead, were going right at them. The human ships charged directly into the Zephyrian formation. The enemy weapons, designed to fight careful long-range battles, had trouble tracking targets that were moving so fast and so unpredictably. Jake's ship took hits, but the thick armor that human engineers built held together. Ben, I need everything the engines can give me, Jake called. You got it, Captain. But if we hit that ship at this speed, we'll find out what happens. The New Horizons slammed into the side of a Zephyrian command vessel. The impact threw everyone on the bridge to the floor. But the human ship's reinforced hull punched through the enemy's perfect geometric armor. Atmosphere rushed out of both ships, but human vessels were built for this kind of damage. Amy, signal the boarding teams, Jake ordered as he pulled himself back to his feet. Boarding teams, sir. Ben, grab some Marines and get over there. Find out what makes these things tick. Ben Rodriguez led 20 human soldiers through the hole their ship had punched in the enemy vessel. What they found inside shocked them. The Zephyrian ship was beautiful, elegant, and completely unprepared for the chaos of human warfare. The machines inside moved with perfect efficiency, but they seemed confused by enemies who did not follow logical patterns. When Ben's team started using explosives in close quarters, something the sophisticated alien armies would never risk, the Zephyrian systems began making errors. But Ben found something worse in the command center. Computer displays showed not just this star system, but dozens of others. The Zephyrians were not just attacking randomly. They were building something huge, something that required the resources of entire worlds. Captain, Ben's voice crackled over the radio. You need to see this. These machines, they're not just conquering. They're preparing for something bigger. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 3 human ships were destroyed and 5 more were heavily damaged. But the Zephyrian advance fleet was in retreat, something that had not happened since the invasion began. Admiral Zexhai's voice came over the communication system, filled with something Jake had never heard from an alien before. Respect. Captain Morrison. Our sensors show the enemy fleet withdrawing. How did you accomplish this? Jake looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was injured, and his ship would need months of repairs, but they had done something the galaxy thought was impossible. Admiral, I think we just taught them something new. News of the human victory at Kepler Station spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. General Alex Turner sat in the conference room on Nexus Prime, watching alien delegates argue on the main screen. He had been promoted after the battle and sent to represent humanity at the Emergency Galactic Council session. The reaction was not what Alex had hoped for. The humans have made everything worse, declared Prime Minister. Vel talks of the hegemony of Valtis. The tall, blue-skinned alien stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms gesturing angrily. Their reckless attack has only made the Zephyrians more aggressive. Elder Counselor Veshitar, looking even older than when he had made the first distress call, nodded slowly. Minister Veltox raises a valid concern. The machine intelligence has increased their advance speed by 30% since the engagement at Kepler. Alex wanted to stand up and shout at them, but he kept his mouth shut. Admiral Kane had warned him that galactic politics were complicated. Still, he had not expected this level of stupidity. With respect, honored delegates, Alex finally said, the Zephyrians were already moving at maximum speed. Our intelligence suggests they're working on a timeline, not reacting to our actions. Several aliens made dismissive sounds. A floating ethereal, its gas-formed body shimmering blue and green, spoke in a voice like wind through trees. General Turner, your species has been part of galactic civilization for barely 50 years. Perhaps you should listen to those who have maintained peace for millennia. Alex pulled up a holographic display showing the current tactical situation. Red dots marked Zephyrian positions, steadily advancing toward the galaxy's core worlds. Honored Ethereal, how has that peace worked out for the 3 billion beings who are already dead? The chamber fell silent. Alex had broken one of the rules of galactic diplomacy by mentioning casualties so directly. But he was tired of watching these people dance around the truth. The Council proposes a new strategy, Veshtar announced. We will offer the Zephyrians a negotiated settlement. Selected outer systems in exchange for a guarantee of non-aggression toward core worlds. Alex stared at the old alien. You want to give them planets full of people? Empty planets, General. We would evacuate the populations first. And where exactly would you put 15 billion refugees? Prime Minister Veltok stepped forward. That is a logistical challenge we are prepared to address. The important thing is to prevent further escalation. Alex looked around the chamber. 42 alien species, some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and they were seriously discussing surrender. He thought about Jake Morrison and his crew, fighting impossible odds while these politicians planned retreats. I have a different proposal, Alex said, activating his own holographic display. Full military mobilization of all Council species. Combined fleets using human tactical doctrine. Hit them hard and fast before they can complete whatever they're building. The reaction was immediate and negative. Delegates began shouting in dozens of languages. Several species started moving toward the exits. Absolutely not, Veltox declared. Human tactics are barbaric throwbacks to primitive warfare. We will not corrupt our military forces with such methods. Alex watched them argue and realized something important. These people were not just afraid of the Zephyrians. They were afraid of changing who they were. They had spent so long being civilized that they had forgotten how to fight for their lives. The vote was 42-1 against the human proposal. Only Earth supported full military mobilization. While the politicians argued on Nexus Prime, Lieutenant Colonel Maya Brooks was leading a very different kind of mission. She had taken a small team of volunteers to investigate one of the fallen worlds, trying to understand what the Zephyrians were really doing. Zerion 7 had been a Chitauri colony, home to about 2 million of the insect-like beings. Now it was something else entirely. Maya's ship approached the planet carefully, using stealth systems that human engineers had borrowed from a dozen alien technologies. Colonel, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the surface, reported Sergeant Dan Cooper from the scanner station. Whatever they're building down there, it's huge. Maya studied the readings. The planet's surface showed geometric patterns that stretched for hundreds of miles. At the center of each pattern was a tower that reached up into space, surrounded by structures that hurt to look at directly. Those towers, said Dr. Lisa Park, the team's science officer. They're not just buildings. They're broadcasting something. Broadcasting what? I don't know. But the signal is directed toward deep space somewhere outside our galaxy. Maya felt cold despite the ship's heating system. Dan, take us down. We need to get closer. The team landed in what used to be the capital city. Now it was a maze of converted buildings and strange machines. Everything was perfectly organized, but it looked wrong somehow. Like someone had tried to rebuild a city without understanding what cities were for. Movement ahead, whispered Corporal Amy White from point position. Something big. They found the survivors in an underground tunnel system that the Chitauri had built as storm shelters. About 50 of the insect-like beings huddled in the darkness, led by a young engineer named Clicksnull. Humans. Clicksnull's voice clicked and buzzed through his translator. You came here? This world is death now. Maya knelt down to the Chitauri's level. Even standing, he was only about 4 feet tall. with 6 legs and compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. We're here to help. Can you tell us what the machines are building? Clixnall's antennae twitched nervously. Before our world fell, our scientists found old warnings, ancient messages left by civilizations that came before us. They spoke of the harbingers. What are harbingers? The machines you call Zephyrians, they are not the true enemy. They prepare the way for something worse. The towers they call to the dark spaces between galaxies. They call to those who devour stars. Dr. Park checked her instruments. Colonel, the energy readings are increasing. I think those towers are almost ready to activate. Clixnall, how many other worlds have these towers? Every world that falls, the machines build them. 12 worlds now have the calling towers. When enough are built, the devourers will come. Maya helped the survivors to their feet. We need to get you out of here. Can you make it to our ship? As they moved through the converted city, Maya saw the truth of what the Zephyrians were doing. They were not just conquering worlds. They were turning each planet into a beacon, calling something from the darkness between galaxies. Dan, prep the ship for immediate departure, Maya said into her radio. We need to get this information back to command. But as they reached the ship, alarms began sounding across the planet. The towers had detected their presence. Colonel, massive energy buildup, Dan reported. Those towers are activating. Maya looked up and saw light beginning to pulse from the tower tops. Not normal light, but something that made her eyes water and her head hurt. Everyone on board now. As their ship lifted off, Maya watched the towers send their signal into space. Whatever they were calling to, it was listening. And according to Clixnall, 11 other worlds were sending the same signal. The race was no longer about stopping the Zephyrians. It was about stopping whatever was coming to answer their call. Back on Nexus Prime, General Alex Turner received Maya's report just as the council session was ending. The alien delegates were filing out, satisfied with their plan to negotiate with machines that did not negotiate. Alex looked at the intelligence data and realized that humanity was about to face something much worse than anyone had imagined, and they were going to face it alone. The activation of the calling towers changed everything. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center on Earth's newest military station, watching sensor displays that showed something massive moving through the dark space between galaxies. The objects were still months away, but they were big enough to see from this distance. Sir, the long-range telescopes are getting clearer images, reported Commander Amy Foster. She had been promoted after Kepler Station, and now served as Morrison's intelligence chief. These things are... They're huge. Each one is the size of a small moon. Jake studied the data. 12 objects moving toward their galaxy in perfect formation, the devourers that the Chitauri survivor had warned them about. Any response from the Galactic Council? Amy shook her head. They're still trying to negotiate with the Zephyrians. Master Diplomat Helix Smore of the Ethereal Collective is leading a peace delegation to the occupied systems. Jake wanted to laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. The aliens were so committed to their peaceful ways that they could not see what was coming. Even with proof that the Zephyrians were calling something worse, they still believed talking would solve everything. What about our recruitment efforts? That's better news, sir. General Turner's program is working. We've got volunteers from 16 different species now. Jake looked at the personnel reports Amy handed him. Most of the volunteers were exactly what he expected. Outcasts, criminals, military officers who had been dismissed for being too aggressive. The kind of people their own governments did not want. How many ships do we have? 47 combat vessels and about 100 support ships. It's not much compared to the full council fleets, but these crews actually want to fight. Jake nodded. It was strange how things had turned out. The galaxy's official militaries had thousands of ships, but they were paralyzed by politics and fear. Meanwhile, a collection of misfits and rebels had become the only real military force willing to engage the enemy. The emergency alert that interrupted their conversation was something Jake had been dreading. Amy quickly switched the main screen to show a live feed from the Valtis system, home to one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Sir, this is the diplomatic mission. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The screen showed Master Diplomat Helix Moore, a shimmering ethereal, standing before a massive Zephyrian construct. Behind the diplomat, Jake could see the rest of the peace delegation. Representatives from dozen species, all there to offer surrender terms. People of the galaxy, Helix Moore said, his gas-form body pulsing with calm colors. We have come to negotiate a peaceful solution to this conflict. We offer tribute, territory, even voluntary cooperation in exchange for an end to hostilities. The Zephyrian response was immediate and horrible. The machine construct opened up, revealing weapons that Jake had never seen before. Energy beams lanced out not to destroy the diplomatic ship but to capture it. The entire vessel was pulled inside the Zephyrian construct like it was being swallowed. Then the real nightmare began. The Zephyrians broadcast what happened next across every communication channel in the galaxy. They showed the diplomatic team being processed, converted into biological components for their machines. The process took 6 hours, and every species in the galaxy watched their representatives die in the most horrible way possible. When it was over, the Zephyrians sent a single message to the Galactic Council. They transmitted the location of their next target, the Valtis homeworld with 12 billion inhabitants. Jake watched in horror as the attack on Valtis began. The planet's defenses were impressive, energy shields that could stop most weapons and orbital platforms with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. But the Zephyrians had learned from every previous battle. They adapted their weapons in real time, turning the planet's own defenses against it. The conversion of Valtis took 18 hours. The Zephyrians systematically disassembled everything, from the great cities to the orbital shipyards. 12 billion beings died as their world was turned into raw materials for more machines. And then the 13th calling tower began broadcasting its signal to the void. The emergency session of the Galactic Council that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Jake watched the proceedings from Earth, as delegates who had spent months talking about negotiation and retreat finally faced the reality of what they were fighting. Admiral Morrison found himself addressing the Council through a communication link, speaking to the same aliens who had rejected human help months before. "Honored delegates," Jake said, keeping his voice calm despite his anger. "The time for negotiation is over. The Zephyrians have shown you what they think of diplomacy. Now you have a choice. Fight or die." Elder Counselor Veshitar, looking ancient and broken, spoke for the Council. "Admiral Morrison, we understand now that our previous approach was flawed, but our military forces are not trained for the kind of warfare you humans practice. Then we'll train them. With respect, Admiral, many of our species find human tactics disturbing. The idea of ramming enemy ships, of boarding actions, of fighting at close quarters. These things go against thousands of years of civilized warfare." Jake thought about the billions of people who had died while these aliens worried about being civilized. "Counselor, do you want to survive this? Of course, but then you need to learn to fight like your lives depend on it." Because they do. The debate that followed went on for hours. Some species, terrified by what they had seen, agreed to work with the humans. Others, led by what remained of the Valtis government in exile, argued that humanity's violent methods would corrupt galactic civilization. In the end, the vote was closer than before, but still a rejection. 26 species voted to continue pursuing diplomatic solutions. 16 voted to accept human military assistance. But something else happened during that session. Dr. Emma Clark, humanity's chief scientist studying alien biology, made a presentation that changed how everyone thought about the war. "The reason humans fight differently," she explained to the Council, "is because we evolved differently. Most of your species developed on worlds where cooperation was essential for survival. You learned to share resources, to avoid conflict, to work together." The alien delegates listened with interest. This was the kind of academic discussion they were comfortable with. Humans evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Predators, weather, disease, other humans. We learned to fight back against impossible odds because that was the only way to survive. Dr. Clark brought up brain scans comparing human and alien neural patterns. Your brains are wired for careful thinking, for considering consequences, for avoiding risk. Human brains are wired to act fast, take chances, and keep fighting even when logic says to give up. "What does this mean for the current crisis?" asked a Quellan delegate. "It means that some individuals from every species have the potential to think like humans. They're the ones your societies usually consider troublemakers or outcasts, but they're also the ones who might be able to adapt to this kind of warfare." Jake realized what Dr. Clark was saying. The galaxy's rebels and misfits, the ones who did not fit into peaceful societies. They were the ones who could learn to fight the Zephyrians. After the council session ended, Jake found that his recruitment numbers had tripled. Aliens who had been listening to the broadcast were volunteering for the human-led forces. Not the official militaries, but individuals who were willing to try something different. Commander Amy Foster brought him the final numbers. "Sir, we've got volunteers from 31 species now. Most of them are exactly what you'd expect. Criminals, outcasts, military officers who were too aggressive for their own forces." Jake looked at the list of names and species. It was not the grand alliance he had hoped for, but it was something. A collection of misfits and rebels led by humans who had never learned to give up. "Amy, how long until the Devourers reach our galaxy?" "Best estimate? 4 months, sir. 4 months to train an army of outcasts and criminals to fight the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen." Jake had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This time, the fate of everything depended on teaching the galaxy's misfits how to be heroes. 6 months after the destruction of Valtis, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the strangest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. 200 ships of every possible design floated in formation around him. Human battleships flew alongside Chitauri mining vessels that had been converted into weapons platforms. Ethereal scout ships worked with Quellan crystal cruisers. Even some reformed Zephyrian units, machines that human hackers had freed from their collective programming, served in the fleet. They called themselves the Free Fleet, and they were the galaxy's last hope. "Admiral, the Devourers are coming out of hyperspace," reported Commander Amy Foster from the tactical station. 12 constructs, just like our projections. Jake watched the main screen as the enemy appeared. The Devourers were even more terrifying than the intelligence reports had suggested. Each one was the size of a small moon, but they moved with impossible grace. Their surfaces were covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly, and they seemed to bend space around them. "General Turner, are your ground forces ready?" Jake asked over the communication system. General Alex Turner's voice came back from the surface of the former Quellan homeworld, where the largest Zephyrian gateway facility was located. "As ready as we can be, Admiral. We've got humans, Chitauri, ethereals, and even some awakened Zephyrians working together down here. It's chaos, but it's organized chaos." Jake nodded. The plan was desperate and probably impossible, but it was the only chance they had. Dr. Emma Clark had discovered that the Devourers had one weakness. Their collective intelligence could not understand sacrifice without logical purpose. If they could damage the gateway network by doing something completely irrational, it might cause the entire system to fail. "Colonel Rodriguez, how are we looking on the special project?" Ben Rodriguez, now in charge of the fleet's most important mission, checked his instruments. "Admiral, we're ready. All nuclear warheads have been loaded into the delivery ships. The crews understand what they're signing up for." Jake felt sick thinking about it. The plan required dozens of ships to fly directly into the largest Devourer construct and detonate their nuclear arsenals inside it. Everyone who participated would die, but it might damage the creature's connection to the gateway network. "Amy, any word from the Galactic Council?" "They're still debating evacuation procedures, sir. Most of the official fleets are retreating to the Galactic Rim." Jake was not surprised. Even faced with extinction, most alien governments could not adapt to the reality of total war. They were still trying to save themselves instead of fighting for everyone. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake announced to the fleet. "You all know what we're up against. These things have come from outside our galaxy to consume everything we care about. The Zephyrians were just the beginning. If we don't stop the Devourers here, there won't be anywhere left to run." The response came from dozens of species in dozens of languages, but the message was the same. They were ready to fight. The battle began when the Devourers reached the inner system. Their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they fired pure entropy, breaking down the bonds that held matter together. Ships that were hit simply stopped existing. But the Free Fleet did not fight like a normal galactic military. Instead of careful formations and coordinated tactics, they attacked in wild, unpredictable waves. Human ships rammed Devourer constructs, while Chitauri fighters swarmed around the giant creatures like angry insects. Ethereal vessels phased in and out of reality, striking at weak points that should not have existed. "Admiral, the enemy is having trouble adapting," Amy reported. "Their response patterns keep changing like they can't figure out what we're doing." Jake smiled grimly. "That's because we don't know what we're doing either." The chaos was working. The Devourers, used to fighting organized civilizations with predictable tactics, could not adapt to an enemy that made no logical sense. But the cost was terrible. Ships were dying by the dozens, and Jake could see that they would not last long. Ben, it's time. Take your volunteers and hit the big one. Colonel Ben Rodriguez led 50 ships in a direct assault on the largest Devourer construct. Half of the vessels were destroyed before they could reach their target, but the survivors punched through the creature's defenses. Jake watched as they disappeared inside the massive entity. "Admiral," came Ben's voice over the radio, distorted by the strange energies inside the Devourer. "We're at the core. This thing it's beautiful and horrible at the same time. I can see the gateway connections from here. Ben, get out of there. Set the charges and evacuate." "No can do, Admiral. The nuclear devices need to be manually triggered, and someone needs to stay to make sure they all go off at the same time." Jake felt his heart break. Ben Rodriguez had been with him since the beginning, back when they were just patrolling the edge of human space. "Ben, Admiral, tell my wife I love her, and tell her we did something that mattered." The explosion was visible across half the galaxy. The largest Devourer construct convulsed as nuclear fire burned through its core. But more importantly, its connection to the gateway network began to fail. Jake watched as the creature's perfect movements became erratic, confused. "All ships, hit them now," Jake ordered. "They're vulnerable!" The Free Fleet pressed their attack, but Jake knew they were still outnumbered. Even with one Devourer damaged, 11 more were advancing on the gateway world where General Turner's forces were fighting. On the planet's surface, General Alex Turner watched as Zephyrian machines and Devourer constructs battled his combined ground forces. The fighting was unlike anything in galactic history. Human soldiers fought alongside insectoid Chitauri warriors, while gas-form ethereals provided reconnaissance and freed Zephyrian machines turned their weapons on their former masters. "General, we've reached the main gateway facility," reported Lieutenant Colonel Maya Brooks over the radio. "But sir, this thing is huge. We'd need an army to destroy it." Alex looked around at his forces. Humans, aliens, and machines working together in ways that should have been impossible. They were all exhausted, many were wounded, but none of them had given up. "Maya, we are an army. The strangest army the galaxy has ever seen, but we're here." The assault on the gateway facility was brutal. The Zephyrians defended it with everything they had. But human tactics combined with alien abilities proved unstoppable. Chitauri engineers tunneled under the facility's defenses, while ethereal infiltrators disabled security systems. Human Marines provided the raw courage needed to charge through enemy fire. In the facility's core, Maya found the master control system. But destroying it would require someone to stay behind and manually overload the power systems. "General, I can do this, but I can't get out afterward." Alex wanted to order her to find another way, but there was no time. The Devourers were breaking through the fleet defenses above. "Maya, do it." The gateway network's destruction sent shockwaves through space-time itself. The remaining Devourer constructs, suddenly cut off from their coordination system, began attacking each other. Their collective intelligence, unable to process the concept of willing sacrifice, completely broke down. Jake watched from orbit as the great creatures turned on each other. Their perfect unity dissolved into chaos. Within hours, all 11 remaining Devourers had either fled back to intergalactic space or destroyed each other. The war was over, but the cost had been enormous. Earth itself had been destroyed in the final battle, converted into a massive projectile weapon and fired at a Devourer construct. Billions of humans and aliens had died. The Free Fleet was reduced to a handful of damaged ships, but they had won. 6 months later, Commander Amy Foster stood before the reformed Galactic Council on the new capital world of New Geneva. The aliens who had once dismissed humanity now listened to every word she said. "The galaxy learned something important during this war," Amy said. "We learned that sometimes the only way to preserve civilization is to fight for it. We learned that cooperation does not mean avoiding conflict. It means standing together when everything is at stake." She looked out at the assembled delegates, representatives of species that had once thought humans were too primitive to matter. When the galaxy begged for aid, only humanity came to fight. But in the end, we all learned how to be human. We all learned that some things are worth dying for. The final scene showed children of dozens of species playing together in the memorial park on New Geneva. Their parents, veterans of the Free Fleet, watched from nearby. In the distance, construction continued on the memorial ships being built to honor Earth's sacrifice. Each ship bore the names of every human who had died so that others might live. The galaxy had been saved, but more importantly, it had learned to save itself.